director at BWG Connect. We're just a giant networking, knowledge sharing group. Kicked it off 8 years ago. I was on the brand side and just wanted to have a lot of brand conversations around my pain points, what their pain points were, and maybe we can work together to solve them. And so we kicked this off 8 years ago. And yeah, this has just been cooking along now. It's pretty crazy. We'll do well over 100 webinars this year and a bunch of dinners as well. So if you're going to any of the big trade shows, you're in a tier one city, shoot us a note. Whenever we show up there for a dinner, we'll be sure to send you an invite. It would be great to connect in person. I spend the majority of my time just talking to brands around overall brand strategy, what's working, what's not, and asking, hey, what are you trying to solve for? And it's in those conversations we come up with the topics for all the webinars and dinners we do. And I say that because after we wrap this webinar up, you'll probably see an email come over from me, and I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to pick your brain on what do you see going on? What are those topics you want us to cover? But also more than happy to open my network up and share it with anybody on the line today. One of the topics that comes up over and over again is around brand protection, marketplace enforcement. I don't think anybody's surprised at that. This is something that, prior to Amazon really taking off, wasn't really something that was out there. So there's a lot of legacy organizations that are just still trying to grapple with how Amazon and the marketplaces work as a whole, and the fact that lots of people can be out there selling your goods. And so as we kick this off, Zach over at Sigil is a longtime friend, partner, support of the network, and a ton of brands in it. Super cool. And is here to answer as many questions as we can throw at him. So I say that from the standpoint, if you have any, drop them in the Q&A section and we'll get them answered in real time, essentially. So don't hesitate to throw any questions you have around marketplace enforcement. And that could be anything to do with brand protection on Amazon, unauthorized resellers, gray market, whatever it might be, authorized seller programs, all that fun stuff. But Zach, I guess I've rambled a bunch here. Do you want to jump in and just let everybody know a little bit about you, what you're doing, your background, what you've built with Sigil and all that fun stuff, and then we can jump into the conversation?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Aaron. I appreciate it. And yeah, hey, everybody, welcome. Thanks for coming in and attending. And yeah, kudos to Aaron, everything that the team does at the BWG Connect side. I think they're awesome, great supporters for brands. So grateful to be part of this community and this network. And thanks, Aaron, for you. And thanks, Andrew, everybody else who pulls this stuff together. So I appreciate it. My background here is, just like Aaron said, I'm here to try to answer your guys' questions as much as I can. So for context, my background is as an attorney. I started out in intellectual property at a very large law firm, doing very high-end legal work for fancy brands. And then after that, I was an in-house general counsel for a global brand. And so I got to see, everything under the sun in this space. And we had diversion, parallel import, gray market, counterfeit, right, lawsuits, cyber squatting, just all the things. So I've had, a crash course, very in depth of all the various brand protection, supply chain related product development issues, from all the way from creation, ideation to prototype creation, design, manufacturing, distribution, supply, so all these issues, right? Which I bring that up because we're here talking about brand protection, obviously, marketplace being a big piece of that, but brand protection is something that is system wide for a company. So understanding each of those elements and how they relate is important. So I was in that experience for a long time. I was very fortunate in that I was trained by a longtime brand enforcer who had over 30 years of experience with other Fortune 500 brands. So we did a lot of things that most brands never know about or attempt, raiding factories all over the world, things like that. And also, because of my time at the large firm, I knew attorneys at Amazon and Walmart. I was able to work directly with them, understand their systems and their programs. And so I know a great deal about the back end of their enforcement programs as well. I actually was a beta test attorney, helped Amazon develop a lot of the programs and parts of brand registry. So I know a lot about how those back-end systems, are supposed to behave, and how Amazon, how you can work with Amazon to try to make things more successful. And so that's that kind of background experience. I had my own legal practice where I was doing this type of work and consulting and advising brands before I then launched into Sigil. And so to give the brief. This is by no means intended to be a sales related pitch, but just for context and information. What we do at Sigil is we provide a delete button for brands when they run into unauthorized sellers. So essentially, if you've got unauthorized sellers on your marketplace listings, we can take all the work and things that I'm about to tell you about today and condense that for you. So all you have to do is click the button and we'll have, human piloted AI agents essentially automate through the rest of that process. So highly successful product, but that's not the main topic of today, unless you guys want it to be. Instead, I've got questions prepared here that we can talk through. So I pulled together some of the most common questions that we hear in terms of brand protection related issues. So I can kind of start running through these, but like Aaron said, would love to get some questions live here. So
Yeah, we've got the first one in. I do want to tackle this one around brand registry, and then Chris, I see your question in here. The other one that comes in is, can you give an overview of brand registry? So because there's that one, and then this was your first, like, I guess, most asked question. Let's tackle that, and then we'll get into Chris's question next.
cool.
And others, you have questions, just drop in the Q&A, and we'll get to them. It's an open Q&A here.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. All right. So yeah, I'll address this one from here, right? Why does Amazon allow unauthorized sellers on brand registry listings, right? It's a big source of contention and frustration. So
Yeah, really quick. That is because brands believe once they've done brand registry, nobody else can sell on their listing, right?
right.
That's what they believe, right? And that's
Yep.
not true.
That is not true. That is a understandable belief, but that is not what brand registry is there for or what it's about. Brand registry is meant to give you access to tools to help control your brand, but Amazon operates as an open marketplace. And so they allow anybody to sell your brand so long as they're selling legitimate, non-counterfeit products, right? And the reason for that is, excuse me, that is the baseline legal position in the United States, is that a marketplace can operate openly and allow anybody to sell those products online who has those products. That's ever since the 2010 case with Tiffany versus eBay, that's sort of the baseline rule that came up. So for a marketplace, like Amazon or Walmart or anybody else, right? If they are going to implement a new system that is going to police for unauthorized sellers one way or another, it's a difficult and tricky issue. Every seller requires, detailed investigation to answer that. It's not like counterfeit is very black and white. That's much easier to address. Unauthorized seller is really complicated. So for a marketplace to go in and build a system to address unauthorized sellers, they are basically disrupting the legal baseline, the legal status there. That means they're taking on all that added risk, because if they get anything wrong, right, then it's like, this is not only have they violated whatever contractual relation or IP issue, there's a potential negligence claim. So it's a big barrier to ask a marketplace to say, hey, go against the legal status quo here and try to investigate and solve for these issues. They're kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't. So in that case, they're going to take the path of lowest risk and provide it as an open marketplace.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we
Cool.
have some questions coming through here. I mean, are you seeing them on your side as well, Zach? So the first one is,
Yeah.
how does a legitimate brand battle against competitors on Amazon that are clearly building numerous fake reviews around ASINs? What are the best practices for Amazon tier 1 brand 3P sellers to build 5-star reviews?
Oh man, that is such a good question. And so those fake reviews are a real pain. There are certain services that will help identify and guide you through removing those. Dan and Coleman over at Ecom Triage, I think, does a really good job with this. He's been working in this space for a long time, has various workflows to help identify this type of thing. So my first thought to that is, there are services out there to help remove and clean up those reviews if they are indeed fake reviews, and you should be able to report those. Dan has a litany of escalation options and paths for how to address that. So that would be my first piece to it. The second piece, depending on how aggressive you want to be, if you have evidence that these fake reviews are being generated by a competitor, right? That's fraud, right? That, I mean, that's certainly there are going to be legal violations along the lines there. And so there are escalation paths you could take to a competitor. That's illegitimate, business competition, and state laws provide limits to what someone can do there. So outside of that, I mean, a tier one brand is going to build 5-star reviews by being a great brand. So the 3P sellers to that, you just want to make sure that, I mean, that they're authorized, right? Because the only risk outside of that is, right, what we see every day are sellers who are listing, old, used, defective product, right? Now that's going to obviously bring down your rankings and your reviews. Those are not fake reviews, but yeah, a different kind of issue. So I guess there's sort of three answers there: services to address removing fake reviews, legal escalation if it's warranted, and then ensuring clean marketplace presence for sellers.
Awesome. Next question that rolls in. Hi, Zach and Aaron. Thank you for putting this together. Do you have any questions on how to stop Amazon from shipping products to the AE that are meant to be sold in North America? We're concerned with safety, but in the listing they have a warning, so we're SOL. Any help is much appreciated.
Okay, so that's interesting. So to clarify here, my understanding of it, you've got Amazon is selling products into the wrong territories as part of like the Amazon global store, is what this sounds like, where it's products that are intended for North America and being taken into, I'm not exactly sure what AE stands for, but into like Asia or Europe territories.
He said
And
that's
so,
correct. Yep.
okay, all right. Boy, I would think this is the kind of place to try to escalate it to your Amazon rep there to try to get them to step in. Um, and if not, I mean, I guess it depends on the degree of safety concern there, because like if you have any evidence of consumers in those other territories running into impact or having, a negative experience, et cetera, so it's more than just a concern, but there's some documented evidence, then that's the time to try to bring that up through, if not your support rep there, then through like Amazon legal counsel and, presenting that issue to them, and then they can try to manage it. One caution I'll just add to everybody here is whenever you try to escalate to Amazon legal, then literally the case on the back end gets flagged with like a legal flag. And so no other departments will be able to help you at that point. And so, because they will just defer to legal as they move that case through. So I typically try to say, hey, see if there's another department or path we can get this through first. If not, then okay, we have contacts at Amazon Legal and we can try to escalate it there. That's my first impression.
Yeah, there's a lot of just when I was on the brand side, we had distribution agreements like in Australia. And when the global platform opened up, they were shipping product. Amazon wasn't selling it in Australia, even though we had distribution agreements, exclusive distribution agreements with companies there. And that was a whole nother issue. But
Yeah.
it's Amazon's, I don't know, willy
See, I
nilly.
know the reverse issue for this, like if you've got it where it's an international product coming into the United States, right? We know how to address that through paths. Um, but I'm not sure how to stop basically Amazon participating as an exporter and uh, without going through Amazon to try to address it, or, you know, making the issue much more expensive and worse through a legal process.
Awesome. Next question that comes in, what can a brand without selective distribution do to remove unauthorized sellers on Amazon? And if you want to, kind of walk through what selective distribution is, that'd be great. And then we can kind of then dive into the answer.
Yeah, great. This is a really complicated question, which is really interesting. For something so succinct, it's really complicated. So selective distribution is the idea that brand only distributes through known entities. They enter into agreements with these known parties, and that those folks, control how the products are going to be sold, or where it's going to be distributed, right? So you would sell to a distributor. That distributor then is going to bring it out to various, retail stores, et cetera, on behalf of that brand, and that's sort of the distribution channel that they've selected. And the idea there is that when you have everybody under contract, everybody plays by the rules, the products are sold where they're supposed to, and there's no leakage or diversion. The reality is there's always leakage and diversion, even from the people you would trust the most. Like, just believe me, it always happens. And so, but selective distribution is the thing that marketplaces try to throw back in the face of brands. And they say, well, hey, don't come crying to me about third-party seller on your listing. This is a distribution problem. You're the one who can't control your products and your distribution. You need to get your distribution under control, and that will solve this problem, right? It's sort of like it's a hot potato, right? Selective distribution agreements and like having many legal agreements and kind of a baseline for this has been the narrative from attorneys, for decades, right? It is, and in fairness, in many cases, it's the right thing to do, right? As an attorney, I'd say there are a lot of times when having, updated, strong legal documentation around a topic is important, right? But the caveat is that every business is different. Every business's goals and aims are different. Not all contracts need to be or should be used the same. And it's a judgment call for every business on a risk profile of what they want to do and what they're trying to achieve. So it may make a lot of sense for a particular company to not be using selective distribution, right? A lot of times, especially early as new products launch and new brands launch, the point is to get the brand out there as much as possible and not restrain distribution. And we say, here you go, sell, and we're going to make as much of this as possible and get it out there and dominate a market of some kind. The reverse of that, though, is you're intentionally creating unauthorized sellers, or almost, not to split hairs on semantics, right? But if you don't have selective distribution, then unauthorized or authorized doesn't matter. They're just all sellers, right? You have to have something to designate them. But for purposes of what we're talking about here, the removing unauthorized sellers, there are several different approaches that you can take to going after unauthorized sellers without any selective distribution agreements, right? Selective distribution agreements are always only intended to be with your authorized partners, like a map program or something. By definition, these unknown rogue sellers, unauthorized sellers, you'd never have agreements in place with them anyway. So the techniques that you would use to go after these unauthorized sellers are kind of irrelevant to what you're going to set up with your selective distribution agreements, if that makes sense. So yeah, so if we're going after unauthorized sellers, sure, you've got all the various, techniques and tools at your display there, right? Investigate them, see if you can figure out who they are and where they're getting it up through your supply chain. Do your kind of your op-ed research and try to find their contact information, send your notifications and notices to them. You can work with a service like ours and file complaints on the marketplaces. If you're gonna do it on your own, just make sure you know what you're doing. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I'll come back to that point. You can also send your cease and desist letters. There's escalation paths post cease and desist, like litigation hold notices, draft complaints you can send. All of that technique and opportunity is still there, whether or not you have a selective distribution, agreement or legal documents for that.
Yeah. So when you think about the authorized versus unauthorized, and I do want to go back because there are some watch outs there, right? Like, don't go claiming it's counterfeit so they get shut down, because if it's not counterfeit, that's a whole huge legal mess that
For the
it
love of
opens up.
everything, please stop reporting counterfeits unless you know for a fact that they're counterfeit. Yes.
Yes. So then getting to the authorized and unauthorized reseller, I mean, that's the key thing, right? Is you're adding that material difference between what you're actually selling or the people select distributors, the authorization you're giving them is you're saying, hey, there's this added material benefit. Maybe it's a warranty, maybe it's a guarantee that comes only with, right, your purchase from an authorized reseller. And so if it's anybody else, then it's materially different. And now you can go take them down.
Yes and no to that.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean
Oh, okay.
yeah, that's the high level notion to it, right? The benefit of setting up a material difference sort of aspect or program is that you're trying to create the opportunity to enforce your trademarks based on legitimate material differences. Those differences need to be bona fide, right? You need to actually handle it differently. And in order to do the enforcement, it's more than just saying, I don't recognize this person, right? You have to have like verified evidence that this person is not providing that warranty, right? Or that those products are not covering under that warranty. So there's a little bit of added. That's why I want to throw a little bit of just color to that, so that nobody goes and starts trying to file these things and having some blowback and getting mad at us about it. Um, but yes, and to the point there, right? If you don't have a selective distribution agreement and you're the only seller who's authorized, right? You're like, I'm the manufacturer, I sell this product, I can provide the warranty because this is the product I see and control, and I know it's all under the safety standards and whatever maybe we have consumer product certification safety standards that are in there, right? Like, okay, great, right? You can warrant that, and anything else is like, all right, we like, I don't know who did what with that product. I don't know if that's a material defect or if that was a handling defect, right? So we can't be providing that type of warranty. Then yeah, you can create those material differences and try to bring those to marketplaces. But again, you need more than just a, I don't recognize the seller, so this is not warranted product. There's further investigation that the marketplaces will want to see, and then making sure you're submitting that correctly.
Awesome. Next question, and just a reminder for those of you who have joined, it's kind of an open Q&A here. So if you have any questions in this space around brand protection, marketplaces, removing unauthorized resellers, whatever it might be, brand registry, just drop them the Q&A and we'll just keep getting to them here. Next question that rolls in, how do you remove resellers that are selling authentic new product for non-gated Amazon products?
Cool. Yeah, great question. And I mean, this goes a lot to what we've been talking about. One thing I do want to hit on there is, non-gated Amazon products. So in case everyone, making sure everybody kind of knows what a gated product is or non-gated. So Amazon a number of years ago came up with the idea of this program called brand gating, which was where they said, all right, we're going to shut this off and only the sellers identified are going to be allowed to sell this product. No other sellers will be able to list the product on this listing. They quickly backpedaled off of that because it became so hard to manage, right? And kind of like I said before, like if you're going to institute a system that's against the status quo, you better have a really good reason for it. So they pulled back really hard on it. It does still exist as a program, but there's no way to apply or get involved with it. It has to be handled on a case-by-case basis. Extremely rare. Like I've only seen it with products that have controlled compounds, active ingredients in them, where there's also been a lawsuit. And so like it's a very uncommon solution for the vast majority of brands. I just like to put that out there.
Awesome.
Otherwise, removing resellers of authentic product, yeah, goes into kind of the same litany of things that we've talked about. And so you can use, the traditional approach, investigations, test buys, sending notices, sending cease and desist letters, escalated legal threats, et cetera. All of that applies and is available. And then there are IP complaints that you can try to bring to the marketplace. The challenge is, kind of like you flagged, if it's an authentic product, all right, well, there goes your counterfeit complaint. Can't use that. If you're trying to use copyright image for the complaint, each of the platforms now require licensing, basically require anybody using it to give a license to all of their images. So I know it sucks that brands invest in all this great product imagery and A plus content, and then anybody gets to use it. That does suck. That is sort of the way that they've set up these marketplaces. So typically in this context, um, using a copyright complaint is not going to be successful. That might not, that might vary depending on certain factors, but by and large, right, you're not going to be able to rely on that. And so unless you've got patents that you can get into, and there's been some recent updates in federal circuit law on this, sometimes you can use patents and use the Apex program. Otherwise, it gets into what Aaron and I were talking about, which is setting up the opportunity or ability to submit a material difference style trademark complaint, and that can be effective. Again, there's some steps involved to do that right, so to speak.
So yeah, three more questions rolled in. This is awesome. Would not honoring the warranty put the company at risk for negative reviews? And I think that's part of it, right? Is at the end of the day, most of these companies, they do just honor the warranty at the end of the day, even though it wasn't. That's what I get because of that risk that's right there.
That's
But
really
that's
interesting.
tough because it was bought from an unauthorized reseller, but the person buying it probably doesn't realize that.
Right, which is yeah, right. This is that difficult spot to be in. But here's what I'll tell you. We've worked with brands who have run studies on this to figure out, okay, if we implement this, what is then the impact? Right. And they ran a side-by-side study comparing review rates, response rates, customer complaints, et cetera, for products covered on warranty, not covered on warranty, and they found no impact. And so I think it's something to pay attention to for a brand, right? I don't want you to don't take another company's study and rely on that blindly. I think it's a great question and something for a brand to pay attention to. But it's not, if unauthorized resellers are causing a meaningful disruption, right? Everything with brand protection should be focused through the lens of how am I driving growth, improving the company, right? And so if you are having an issue where you're running into a problem with unauthorized sellers, price erosion, loss of sales, growth, bad customer experience, et cetera, then pursue a solution for it and then pay attention to any change in the negative reviews. I would be shocked if you end up seeing a dispute there, because in the context for brands with which I've worked, when they explain the limitations in the situation, then customers have been understanding. There is also a way, just to be mindful of this, and there is case law around this supporting it, where you can have a warranty program that provides certain benefits related to manufacturer defect. You can also have other customer service and support programs that can provide different types of benefits in different circumstances. So running multiple programs in parallel, which can be, set up with less effort than you might think, can allow to still protect when that warranty happens and keep that legitimate and address at least some, if not all, of the customer concerns and needs there. So there was a really interesting case around Maui Jim sunglasses that had programs in parallel that was recognized by the court that did that.
Awesome. So we have one about registering on the Walmart side, but I want to come back to that one because we've done a lot on Amazon right here. And the next question that comes in is around the transparency program. What about the transparency program? Has there been any long-term success for it?
That's a really good question. Transparency program, I just is another one of those areas where I hear so much confusion and misinformation. What I have heard, and you got to take this for what it's worth because it's a bit of a telephone game, right? I'm not able to get on the phone with the head of Amazon Transparency to verify this. What I've heard from brands is that they're told that transparency can help stop with resellers. But what's actually in the transparency program are policies that still allow resellers. And what transparency is set up to actually do is to solve for counterfeits, because you're basically tagging every one of your products. And that way, anything that doesn't have a transparency tag, anything that's counterfeit, that's been made somewhere else and trying to pass off, gets flagged and doesn't enter. to do it properly, you also, though, you have to tag all product. And a lot of brands I talk to will say, well, what if I just, tag the products going to Amazon? And I said, well, that's not gonna go well because that's against the Amazon policies for the transparency program. Some of that, as is true with Amazon on everything, they're experimenting, and so there might be trends that change. But that is what I have seen pretty consistently, is that transparency works well for anti-counterfeiting and limiting those sales. In terms of its long-term success on the program, I'm not sure what to say. I haven't seen conclusive information one way or the other. There are brands who are really successful under the program and brands who have spent a lot of money and are still frustrated under the program. I think one of the challenges in our field here is that every brand's experience is, fairly unique. So that's tough to do.
Yeah. Awesome. The next question, in regards to Walmart, where do you register the brand on Walmart brand portal or supplier portal?
That's a great question. I would want to probably go and do some research on you for this one and to try to answer that. We've got some folks, I think, in the network, and then some other folks that I know who know the Walmart space very well. From my view, from the brand protection view, I would certainly at least include Walmart brand portal as a place where you are registering. Basically, everything that Amazon does, Walmart is trying to copy. And I mean that just very literally. They are trying to build as much the same playbook as possible as Amazon has set up. And one of the best ways to prevent, for example, like listing hijackers, is to make sure that the listing is registered under a brand registry. And so I would definitely recommend you at least register in the brand portal. And I'm not sure if there's a reason to not also register under the supplier portal.
Awesome. Next question. Assuming there's a legitimate authorized reseller program, is Sigil submitting these materially different brand registry complaints on behalf of the brand?
Great question. So this is about my company specifically and not about a more generalized approach to it. But so the way Sigil works is that Sigil has its own accounts. And so they are submitted through a separate account system. But everything has to be run through the authorization of the brand. So that legal authority, and that's something Amazon does verify and check. We have to have legal authority for everything. So, easiest is when the brand works directly with Sigil and then can provide that grant of legal authority directly. Sigil also works with certain agencies, in which case brand needs to give the agency authority and including authority to give Sigil permission to represent that brand in making those submissions. But everything that Sigil does is kind of strictly legally compliant and following those sort of legal authorizations.
Yeah. Awesome. Man, we've ripped through these questions here. Do you have more?
Oh yeah.
Others, you have questions, keep dropping in there. We'll get them answered. What are some of the other like top ones you get asked a ton?
Yeah, and I'll move through some of these kind of quick. We've touched a little bit about this, but it's helpful just to clarify or clear up any misconceptions about things because we hear a lot of different terminology, right? And so it's useful to get clear. So real quickly, differences between an unauthorized seller, counterfeiter, and a hijacker. We hear that term a lot now. So unauthorized sellers are selling your authentic product. It came out of your factory, you made it, and somehow they've gotten a hold of it and they're selling it and you don't know who they are or why or where they got it. Counterfeiter, made it in a different factory. It's not your stuff. It might be trying to look as much like yours as possible, but it's not the real deal. So like someone found a product or similar product to yours on Alibaba, made an order, and then tried to match your packaging. They bring it onto Amazon. A lot of times they'll do that when they already have some number of units of your authentic product. One, so they can match it, and then two, they submit it all together. And so that way it's easier for them to get it in and they can sell through that counterfeit product. Test buys are important. Third is a hijacker. Right? This term comes up a lot, but really what this is meant to address is when kind of a sort of a black hat actor comes in and takes over control of a listing. And this is usually a listing that has been inactive, right? And so no one's been selling on it for a while. It's kind of sat dormant. It's not under a brand registry account. And they can get in, start listing a product, and then start changing the data on the page, right? So the main thing there is page will suddenly be very different. Like last holiday season, we saw one where it was a product listing was for a comb, but all of the user reviews were about baked beans, right? It was like, okay, this listing got hijacked and turned into a listing for like a comb or hairbrush, or was something very different. So those are important to keep in mind because it's different ways to address each of those problems. Cool. I'm gonna keep ripping.
Yeah.
All right, we've talked a little bit about this. What to do when you find an unauthorized seller, right? So the thing I really want to make sure you guys know is what you do depends on how you best support your company, your business, your growth strategy, right? Like you should be focused on your company's products, sales, health, and growth. That's going to impact these strategies, right? We work with a brand now, major celebrity launched their product D2C, and then lo and behold, a lot of their products showed up on Amazon because they had such a successful initial push D2C. So now that they are trying to bring an agency on and control Amazon, right now there's a lot of cleanup. The way you address that scenario is different from if you've just been, selling everywhere and you're concerned about, your price discrepancies, et cetera. Right? So different approaches for different companies. By and large, though, if you find an unauthorized seller, you're trying to handle it yourself, right? You're going to start by investigating that seller. You want to know as much about who they are and how they got the product as possible, right? Hopefully you can figure out they're one of your partners, and then you can go straight to them to solve it. After that, there's a lot of open source kind of intelligence gathering you can do, or have an investigator do. You can do test buys, you can do reverse who is lookups, you can check state agency filings, you can find a lot of contact information this way and try to understand who they are. And then from there, you can start to send your notices or whatever complaints you want to try to file. And so, so you can go and escalate up there, right? Notice, marketplace complaint, if you've got a basis for it, cease and desist letter, litigation hold notice, draft complaints, et cetera. Cool. All right.
Yeah, just a quick reminder, other people, you have questions, drop them the Q&A, and we'll get to them. But in the meantime, we're rolling through kind of like the top questions that get asked.
Yeah, these are the main questions that I hear typically. So, and I mentioned this earlier about gating. Can Amazon gate my listings to prevent unauthorized sellers? The short answer to this is no, as to unauthorized resellers. Like that's not what the gating program exists for. And again, that would be a reversal of the legal baseline. Instead, there are ways to get a brand gated in very narrow circumstances when it's counterfeit or consumer safety related issues. Like those will rise to a level where Amazon will address it. And again, I've only seen that personally in the context of like active ingredients that, people were physically harmed as a result of counterfeited products, leading to a lawsuit, resulting in a gating program. Beyond that, the only other brands I've heard of that have been successfully gated or are still gated are like Apple, right? So pretty difficult to get to. No direct application process. You have to try to work connections up through Amazon to get there.
Another question that comes in here, is there any other options besides litigation when an unauthorized seller is unresponsive?
Sure. Yeah. You can try to buy out their inventory. We've worked with brands and helped them do that. You can try to, a lot of times if they're unresponsive to the aggressive approach, you can try to see if they'd be willing to become an authorized seller. I will say I haven't seen that second one work very often. Typically, these people have a different approach and business model. Again, I'm not sure if that's the type of person that you want to be working with, but maybe, right? And if that is the way to solve the problem, that's fine. And I've also seen, and you can, in addition to buying out their inventory directly, right, you can try to work with them to do a buyback program where instead of like actually buying it at retail price and then just clearing out their inventory, if they have 1,200 units or something, you can go to them and say, hey, we'll pay you X price for these units. There are a lot of caveats to running a buyback program. Happy to chat with somebody through some of those things if we want to get into more detail, but you want to really bake in things like inspection rights, when you're taking title to the inventory, auditing, when the transfer payments happen, consider using escrow, who's handling shipping, delivery. There's a lot of like devil in the details in these programs. But when the brands who set up buyback programs tend to have really good results. So that's something to consider.
Another question. This is going back to Sigil as a whole. Is there a monthly or annual price? I'm not seeing this in the plans and pricing page for their health monitor rapid response, or is every client custom and negotiated?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And again, I'm grateful and honored, happy to be talking about Sigil. Don't need to make that the focus of the call. But yes, if you have questions about pricing and the plans, please reach out. We're happy to kind of set that up. Sort of like I mentioned, every brand is unique and challenges, has different challenges. Pricing is pretty much based on, all right, how much needs to be scanned and monitored here, and then how much, automated removal do you want to have happen? And so we try to set that up to be as flexible and supportive for the brand as possible, understanding that, that these are frustrating challenges. So we try to be the easiest partner we can on that. So,
Awesome. Awesome.
cool. I've got other questions here to share. So what happens when these sellers are violating MAP programs, minimum advertised price? Can I report them? So no. The thing to keep in mind for MAP versus unauthorized sellers, MAP is strictly for your authorized partners. These are people you have contracts with, and that's how you get them to agree to a MAP policy in the first place. It has nothing to do with authorized sellers. Whether someone is authorized, whether they're infringing your trademark or any of your other IP, price is irrelevant to that question, to that analysis. I should also note that there are ongoing lawsuits presently that were filed in the last couple of months against several of the map providers and several reputable brands and retailers around how map pricing policies have been implemented and utilized. And those lawsuits are directed towards price fixing allegations. So again, I want to just note, unauthorized reseller aspect, irrelevant to price. Map policies, there are important legal frameworks to keep in mind when you're running a map program, which is, for example, you need to be uniform in your treatment of that program, not kind of cutting special deals with any of the retailers, et cetera. And and consistent. There are some other requirements there, but I don't want to delve too far deep into it, but it's something to be mindful. Don't confuse a MAP program with a non-authorized sell program. Some of the other experts in this space talk about MAP as kind of a signaling mechanism. If you're seeing MAP violations, it means that you have an unauthorized seller problem a lot of the times. And so that's kind of the only way that those relate. Otherwise, very different programs.
Awesome.
Cool. All right, how do I unmask or trace these unauthorized sellers? This is frustrating. It's just frustrating. There's not a good solution here. Ever since Amazon started commingling inventory, issues are, test buys used to work a lot better, but ever since commingling, it's like it is hard to get concrete information ever, and you're not even certain what you're getting, right? Which then means you're looking at multiple test buys, and that can be tricky. A lot of these sellers may not have multiple inventory, or there's a lot of inventory manipulation. So test buy programs they're a pain. And anyone here who has tried to run one, you understand they are a pain to try to navigate and get the evidence that you're looking for. So unmasking them is difficult. The other solutions there is going into kind of the investigation path that I mentioned, in terms of the trying to uncover their other online identities and locations, right? If they have a storefront, then you can try to do, a reverse who is lookup. A lot of those have privacy blocks. And so then you're trying to go into any information you can see on that seller, their names, numbers, addresses, anything close to that store name on Amazon, on Walmart, on eBay, comparing these, trying to search for them in state agency listings. You try to track your way through until you can try to find them. Now, many of them also will have sub LLCs and offshore entities. And so sometimes you get stuck. So especially for the more professional ones, or you'll just run into a lot of PO boxes. We see a lot of Wyoming PO boxes. So there's a lot of challenges associated with it. Now, there are professional investigators have access to other deeper tools, former law enforcement, for example. Usually that's who I typically used to hire at the firm, and they can uncover a lot, and you'd be pretty surprised at what people can find. But there's not a clear, easy way to do it. That's kind of one of the benefits that we try to bring through Sigil, is that by working through those complaints to the marketplace, you don't have to unmask them in order to address the issue. But certainly to solve the problem long term, the more information you can get on that seller, the better. All right, types of unauthorized sellers, how to handle each of them. This is a very common question. The thing that, being mindful here of time, the thing that I want to get to address with this, rather than giving you the litany of these things, is that sometimes the best way to deal with unauthorized sellers is to figure out where they're coming from in your supply chain. You might have a third shifting issue where your factory is running product out the back door, and you want to handle that with the factory rather than trying to chase people down with cease and desist letters. You might have a distributor who is buying extra inventory in bulk and then backdooring it, or who is unaware that they're not supposed to be doing this kind of thing, right? And so getting access to invoices or something that you can find the source of where this person is getting the product to figure that out is really important. In that case, I know we talked a bit about selective distribution agreements before, but this is when selective distribution agreements become really helpful, because then you can, instead of sending a cease and desist to the reseller, you send a cease and desist to your distributor, and they will wake up real quick and start paying attention, right? So that is that can be a really useful tool. That again, that's something that the tier one brands like to utilize, that several of the other experts in this space will talk about. So that's why understanding the different types of unauthorized sellers matter. Are you looking at an arbitrager or a liquidator, or are you looking at someone in your supply chain manipulation, and how do you want to approach them? Kind of thing.
It's so crazy.
It's crazy. It's crazy. We've talked a bit about this, IP complaints with Amazon. Short answer is yes. The long answer is you have to have a legitimate IP complaint and kind of know how to file it. Don't file false counterfeit complaints. I see so many YouTube videos of Amazon experts saying, here, let me show you how to file this complaint on brand registry. And they walk you right through and they click the counterfeit complaint thing. And I just cringe. Like, everyone here should know that the Lanham Act provides sanctions against people who file false counterfeit complaints. And those sanctions also include attorney's fees. So very great brands and reputable brands have gotten themselves into massive legal trouble by filing these things. And there are several highly competent attorneys and highly competent resellers who make a great living off of going after these false counterfeit complaints. So just please be careful. Like I said, test buys are really important, but they're hard to pull off. Don't rely on, oh, they're undercutting the price. I've heard this so much. There's no way they could be selling it for that low and be making any money unless it were counterfeit. It's like, yes, they absolutely can, especially if they stole it from you. Like, you don't know if it's counterfeit. So please be careful with that. How effective is brand registry at protecting my listings? Depending on the problem, very effective. Depending on the problem, completely ineffective. Brand registry does not recognize material difference trademark complaints, for example. So if you want to get your Amazon brand registry account suspended, my advice would be file a bunch of material difference complaints. That's not what that program is set up for. So if you have counterfeits, though, really effective program. And obviously brand registry has many other, useful tools in it. I'm moving fast here, just trying to look at the
That's
time.
cool. Yeah, because we have maybe time for this. Might be the last one. What do you think?
Cool. That sounds great. I'll list, there's a
I mean, we
bunch
can
more.
always just have another one of these, right? I think
That's
these
right.
questions could go on forever. And again, everybody, thanks for the great questions that you sent in today. But
Yes, yes. Thank you, everybody. So proactively preventing unauthorized resellers. This is really hard and really the subject for a long conversation. Every brand that is growing is going to hit unauthorized resellers. Like we live in omni-channel e-commerce. Everyone's got to be in these different, you have to be where the customer is. You will experience price arbitrage. You will experience volume discounts, and you will experience eventually organized retail theft. It happens. Trying to prevent this as much as you can is hard because you have to do so much to understand and police and train your whole distribution chain, right? From factory through to consumer, and then post-purchase. Your post-purchase supply chain is basically neglected by almost everybody. But so it's really hard to manage this proactively. Some brands, will just like Rolex, they'll just destroy excess inventory, right? That's a great way to prevent resellers, is they just extremely limit your inventory. Very few brands can utilize a tactic like that. And so if you're trying to prevent unauthorized sellers, it is, this is where we go back to best practices of distribution agreements and unauthorized resellers and trying to build a foundation, getting ready because you don't know what's going to come. And so being ready for that and having the foundation so you can be flexible is really important. So we could talk a lot more about that one, but given the time and the other great questions that we got today, maybe that's a good place to
well, yeah.
pause.
Well, one last one. Do you have any insight into Project Zero program on Amazon? This is a
Yes,
good last
Project.
one that comes in, and then we can
Yeah,
wrap
no
up.
worries. This is great. I mean, I'll keep going for sure. So yeah, Project Zero has been something Amazon has worked hard for, has been kind of a moving target, and the terminology around that has shifted a lot. But Project Zero is basically, this is the best of the best for cleaning up counterfeits. And it basically, if you have, I think it's a 90% success rate in your brand registry submissions over a 6-month time period and consistent counterfeit challenges and problems, then you can qualify for Project Zero. Project Zero will enroll you in additional counterfeit reporting tools. They will set up automated counterfeit identification. You can also, and they will push hard for you to do transparency program in there. And I think they have some additional tools to it as well. But it basically, if you can get your brand into Project Zero, then as soon as you hit a counterfeit submission, like they'll come down right away. And Amazon's going to be even proactively trying to prevent sellers from listing based off, they have kind of AI. I mean, they were using machine learning before AI became such a hot topic to work on this for years. And now they're using kind of the new LLM versions of AI for it to help proactively identify that. So that's what Project Zero is really useful for.
Awesome. Well, Zach, you're awesome. I really, really appreciate your time, how much you support the network, just being open to jumping on for like an open Q&A, all the prep.
Sure.
I would encourage anybody on the line today, if you have any questions in this space, if you need any help, whatever it is, reach out to Zach and the team at Sigil. They're all around awesome and great friends and supporters, a ton of brands in the network already. Look for a follow-up email from me as well. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Just pick your brain on what other topics should we cover. Also, as I said, I can open my network up to everybody as well. But again, like Zach, like a key takeaway in the last like 30 seconds here before we let people get on with their day.
Yeah, focus on driving your business forward, focus on growth and sales health, and brand protection is just another tool to help you be successful.
Yeah. Awesome. We had a couple of great thank yous come through. So, yeah, everybody, thanks for the great questions that came in. And with that, we're going to wrap up this webinar. Everybody, take care, stay safe, and look forward to having you at a future event. Thanks, Zach. You're awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.